So let's get the camera going. Next. Hey, welcome back to, I think we're on episode 6, maybe? I don't know, I've lost track. Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about merino wool and how wool has kind of impacted our area in the past, and which is a stark contrast, especially in terms of what the land looks like now compared to what it was. So merino wool is a wool that is used for a lot of clothing and socks. It's very soft, it's very warm, it retains its warmth when wet, which makes it ideal for outdoor activities. So merino wool. Central Vermont played a pivotal role in merino mania, and merino is Merino, that swept through the state in the early 19th century, transforming its landscape and economy. The catalyst for this boom was a gentleman named William Jarvis. He was Thomas Jefferson's consul to Portugal, who in 1811 imported thousands of merino sheep from Spain to his farm in Wethersfield, Vermont. Now, Wethersfield is a town, like 3 towns south of us, here in Hartford. It's kind of a little subdivision-ish of Windsor. And I can only imagine, he imported thousands of sheep from Spain in 1811. So we're talking about, ships with sails on them and crammed in, and I can just only imagine the stench on board a ship like that. And then you've got to sail it across the Atlantic to presumably Long Island at the mouth of the Connecticut River, and then probably somehow get them north up the Connecticut River. And there's waterfalls and things like that, so you have to navigate or herd the sheep, or it's not like you can just put them in a truck and drive them here. So I don't quite understand the logistics behind that, but that just must have been amazing. So thousands of sheep. Spain had previously maintained a strict monopoly on these fine wool sheep, but the chaos of the Napoleonic Wars allowed for their export. Merino sheep proved remarkably well suited for Vermont's rocky hills and valleys. Their thick, heavy fleeces thrived in the cold weather, and their grazing habits were compatible with the local grasses and hay. The timing of the arrival was also crucial, coinciding with the War of 1812 and subsequent trade embargoes that cut off access to British wool, creating a strong domestic demand. So, the Rocky Hills, yeah, it's crazy. So, the economic impact was immediate and profound. Farmers, many of whom had been subsistence farmers on less fertile land, found a lucrative cash crop in merino wool. Central Vermont, particularly areas like Orange County and Addison County. So Orange County is kind of in the geographic center of Vermont, major town being Randolph, which is kind of where I grew up, and Addison County, which is in western Vermont, bordering up against Lake Champlain and New York State, became hubs for merino sheep farming. So Orange County is pretty hilly, and Addison County is pretty flat. Anyway, in fact, Addison County was reportedly the largest sheep-producing county in the United States in proportion to its territory and population by 1840. Merino mania peaked around the late 1830s. By 1940, Vermont was home to nearly 1.7 million sheep. 1.7 million sheep. A staggering 6 sheep for every person in the state, producing almost 3.7 million pounds of wool. I'm going to do a little, let's see if I can do a little Google search while we're chatting here. So, oops, apparently I can't type in a passcode and talk at the same time. What is the population of Vermont? Okay, so in 2024, the population of Vermont was 648,493. Okay? 648,493 people in 2024. So, let's see if I can copy that number. We're going to copy. I love iPhones. Copy. And then we're going to find a calculator. Okay. This is going to come in insignificant here in just a second. So can I paste into a... I can! Alright. Divided by 1.7... 1.7... No. Get rid of the point. 1,700,000 equals. Can I? What's the inverse of that? Is there an inverse? There is. What? Damn it. Anyway, so a lot more sheep then than there are people now, right? So back in 1840, it was a staggering 6 sheep for every person in the state. So every person in the state could have 6 sheep, and that would balance it out. And that includes like children and infants and the elderly, right? It's not just working people when they do census. So that's crazy. And it produced almost 3.7 million pounds of wool. Textile manufacturers were willing to pay significantly more for merino wool than that from common sheep. So if you take a look at Vermont now, if you were to do like a Google Earth or a flyover or something like that, it's predominantly forested land. And interestingly, 150 years ago, because of all the sheep and then eventually because of all the cows, most of Vermont was deforested. It was wide open, rolling hills. You could see the hills and the hills and the hills, and there weren't many trees on them. And I'm sure that on some of the steeper places and the rockier places, there were trees and some small forests, but by and large, it was completely deforested to provide grazing lands for all these 1.7 million sheep, and that's just amazing. But now it's mostly forested. The forests have reclaimed most of the land. I think we're doing a fairly decent job of maintaining those forests, but that could be debatable, I'm sure. So here we go. However, the prosperity of the merino wool and merino mania was short-lived. A combination of factors led to the decline of the industry. First up, change in tariff laws. The lowering and eventual abolition of protective tariffs meant cheaper wool could be imported. How about that? And so we have these trade imbalances now, even where it's cheaper to buy stuff that's imported than it is to produce it here, which because of anyway, not going to get into that. Competition from the west. As railroads expanded westward, farmers in the Midwest, with their vast, naturally open pastures and lower operating costs, could produce more wool cheaply, right? So as you move out west, it's just naturally flat and deforested. So the labor intensity involved in deforesting didn't exist, right? Because it was already deforested. And then land degradation. The extensive grazing required by large flocks led to widespread deforestation and eventually soil erosion in Vermont. Because of the hills and the rain and the snow melt, without the trees and the roots to hold the soil back, it would just eventually erode. By the 1850s, the merino miracle had largely ended. Many farmers sold their flocks or moved west. The lands, once cleared for pastures, gradually began to reforest, and Vermont transitioned to a different agricultural focus, primarily dairy farming. Despite its relatively brief reign, merino wool industry left an indelible mark on central Vermont, shaping its landscape, economy, and the lives of inhabitants in the early 19th century. And that's true, and when we talk about some other towns, we'll talk about their mills and how they, how the wool industry impacted them. We've already talked a little bit about how it impacted some of the mills here in Hartford. a couple episodes ago. So yeah, interestingly, it would have been, I think it would have been really neat to see, you know, to be able to travel back in time and see Vermont as it was, mostly bald. And that would have been quite interesting. And I imagine it would have been much, you know, windier place. And I don't know, because there aren't the trees to block the winds and whatnot. And in the winters, it must have been also really weird just to see all the rolling hills and stuff. But so that's a little travel back in time. 1.7 million sheep. I can't believe it. And we only have 600 something thousand people right now. And it's way too crowded with people, I think. But the sheep, I mean, they'd be everywhere. They'd literally be everywhere. You couldn't, how noisy would that be? Just sheep constantly braying. Bah, bah, all the time. Non-stop. Gotta bring them water. Gotta bring them food. Whew. Anyway, so that's my little episode on the merino wool here in Vermont, especially in my area. And I hope you got a little bit of information out of this and that you had a good time. I'll give you your time back. It's only been less than 12 minutes today, so that's new. Thanks, everybody. We'll chat soon, I'm sure. Bye-bye. Raw footage.